Hi, I'm Kate, a Mickaboo volunteer. Everyone presenting today is also a Mickaboo volunteer. Mickaboo is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to education and the rescue and adoption of companion birds. We have no paid staff and no physical location. We care for over 450 birds in over 100 foster homes. It may be surprising, but our vet bills average $50,000 a month, and we rely entirely on donations. Newly rescued birds often require medical attention from being neglected, malnourished, or sometimes because of injuries caused by other animals. If you're able to help, please consider donating. And if you're looking for your forever friend bird, you are in the right place. Because we want to be careful about the future lives of birds, it can take 8 to 10 weeks to get through the adoption process. It's not like adopting a dog where you can choose one and take it home the same day. We know the process can be long, but we promise your patience will be worth it. The adoption process starts with our basic bird class held over Zoom every 2 to 3 weeks. Birds are complex creatures with different needs from other pets. They have their own body language and even their own veterinarians, all of which is covered in the class. After the class, you can fill out an adoption application and we'll reach out to schedule the initial screening over the phone. The phone screen takes about 1 hour to help us understand what you're looking for in a bird and your knowledge of bird care. This is also a great time for you to ask us questions. Once the phone screen is completed, the next step is a home visit. This can be done in person, where a Mickaboo volunteer comes to your home, or virtually. We'll help you identify and solve potential dangers in your home, find a good place for the cage, and get to know others who will help care for the bird. We will also want to see other birds that you own already and any cages that you have. We don't mind a bit of a mess, and we do not need to see spaces where the bird will never be. Once the home visit is completed, the last step is board approval. The phone screen and home visit notes are shared with the approvals board for review. Once you're approved, the species coordinator will let you know and will work with you to find the perfect bird for you. And we're hoping that one of those perfect birds will be in today's virtual adoption fair. I'll be introducing the foster parents and birds one at a time, but as we go along, please don't hesitate to ask questions either through the Q&A tab in Zoom or by commenting on the live stream on Facebook, which we're currently trying to restart, but it should be back up soon. Today we'll meet Dara with Bird, the severe macaw, Tiffany and Brandon with Rowdy, the blue and gold macaw, Sarah with Rocky, another blue and gold macaw, and also Sarah with a few more birds, Jakey, a Catalina macaw, and courtesy listings for Mango, Ginger, and Monty. But before we meet the birds, let's go into detail with Dara about macaws in general and what it's like to live with them. Hi, Dara.
Hi, Kate.
Can you tell me what a macaw is?
Sure. So macaws are one of the largest species of parrot, and they are come from South and Central America, where they generally live in the Amazon rainforest or in forested areas. Unfortunately, many of them are considered endangered or extinct, largely because of habitat loss.
Thank you. And you live with macaws, so you can tell us a little bit more what it's like to actually have one in your home.
Yeah, well, and here's
I see a bird peeking out.
speaking of which, yeah, so macaws are extremely social and intelligent birds. There we go. And like all other parrots, so they're pretty busy. They need a lot of activity. There he is. He's coming onto the show earlier. We'll be talking about him in a minute. And they all have, but they all have really unique personalities. So as you get to know a bird, you start to really sort of understand how different they are from one another, because they are so intelligent. But they also experience a lot of challenges in captivity because they live a really long time, and because sometimes our environments aren't really set up like the rainforests where they've known to thrive and live.
When they're living in your house, they're bigger birds. So how much space do they need? How big of a cage do they need? And how much out of cage time is good for them to have?
Yeah, so we recommend as big a cage as you can muster, but a minimum size for the larger macaws are 4 feet wide by 3 feet deep, and height is generally less important, but on average, about 72 inches high, a play stand or other places for them to play on. They should get out of their cage at least twice a day, supervised, obviously, as you watch Bird here chewing on my shirt. They can definitely chew on your furniture or potentially get out or electrical cables. So we want them to get out and get lots of interaction, but for it to also be pretty safe for them to do so.
Another thing about macaws is when they live in the jungle, they communicate with their voices and they're quite loud. So what is it like to have a loud bird in your home with you?
Right. Well, and loud is very much a different people have different perceptions of loud. If a parrot is screaming all day, then that's kind of a sign that there's potentially something bothering them that needs to be, checked out by a vet or other things that might be sort of causing them a little bit of stress. In terms of, if we want to quantify that, they can get up to 100 decibels, which is about the sound of a motorcycle revving right near your ear. So there are some considerations, and they will reach those volumes occasionally. If they're in fear, they use that to talk to each other, and it can be a really loud alarm call, which is kind of doing us a favor because they're socially calling to each other saying, hey, there's danger. But obviously you don't want that to happen right necessarily close to your ear. But they also, use lots of other types of vocalizations, and they have quiet times and loud times. So it's important to really allow for those times, but also try not to reinforce screaming behaviors. For a lot of times unintentionally, we can reinforce that, and so that's something to take into consideration.
And bird is so cute. And things that can help them be happier in their homes are having a good diet and having enrichment toys and training and things. Will you tell us a little bit about what you do with your birds to help keep them happy and occupied?
Yeah, and I think that a lot of that can also be intertwined. And so obviously a good diet, a variety of different fruits and vegetables, a healthy diet is really important. And incorporating that with toys and activities. So foraging toys, putting some of their favorite treats hidden around, so they need to spend a little bit more time being busy to find things and inquisitive to kind of avoid boredom, and lots of other activities. Things to chew on other than, yes, other than little fingers. Lots of different types and shapes of toys, different parts of the house, even where you can hide things. Lots of different areas where they can chew and play and be inquisitive.
And then last, before we start talking about your bird, um, how many macaws are currently in Mickaboo care?
Yeah, so we have 14 macaws right now, in foster care or other looking for their forever homes. And, we, like other bird rescues, are getting contacted almost every month, some more than others, of people that are trying to find a better situation for their birds. And so it really is, I think, showing that they're the plight of these birds in captivity, that we really do need to we need to find more capacity and work on education. We do, oftentimes we have to turn away somebody because we really just don't have space. We're completely reliant on finding a foster home for these birds. And, it's not like necessarily it requires a little bit more know-how than some of the other species of birds, but we all work together as a team and are willing to support people who are able to open up their homes and hearts for these birds.
That's a perfect transition for you telling us about the bird that lives in your home now, Bird. Is he gonna come back on camera for
Yeah, he's just joining us at the dinner table. Come, Bird.
cute. Um, so Bird is a younger and
There
he's a
you go.
younger bird, and I'm saying he, but we're not totally sure whether he's a male or a female, right?
Yeah, so he hasn't been DNA sexed, and that really is sort of the definitive way. Both myself and his former human kind of have used he, him pronouns. Some of the behaviors I think can be a little bit different, but yeah, we're not entirely sure. But it's something that could be done, and sometimes it's very relevant to do that so that we can sort of understand what other kinds of behaviors or health issues we might need to to consider.
And as far as being a younger bird, he's about 5 years old, right? And for a severe macaw, what is a severe macaw, and how long do they typically live?
So he is the largest of the mini macaws. And yeah, so I gave him a super treat right now. So he got just a whole cashew, which is really for these sort of special occasions. But so he could probably live, upwards of 50 years. And he's on a great diet right now. He came in, I think he was mostly on a seed diet, but he instantly really enjoyed his Harrison's pellets. He's a little bit particular about his vegetables, but he's certainly happy to always get his apples and bananas, and so we kind of sneak little green vegetables in there and make a good game of it. So he's going to live for quite some time, and he is a really quite a young macaw right now.
And how does he do with he looks like he's very happy with you. How does he do with other people and different ages?
Yeah, I think because he's young, I think, and he's been, around people, and I haven't really experienced any sort of fear of new people, but he certainly takes a while to get to know everyone. And so it's not, I don't have him sort of stepping up and going on strangers' shoulders or anything like that. He actually warmed up to me, I think, pretty quickly. And he's now
Hi, bird.
getting a shot of his butt. Um, so, um, so where was I? So he actually warmed up really quickly. I think we were pretty good buds right from the beginning. And sometimes macaws will do that. They're like, "Hey, I kind of like you. You seem kind of cool." But it was probably about a month for us to sort of gain this real mutual trust. The beaks are quite large, and I always respect, although I've worked with a lot of macaws, I've always really respected them as individuals, and also because I used to work with large macaws and I value my fingers and keeping them. So, but after about a month, and now we kind of wrestle and we get along pretty well. I do have 8 and 12-year-old child at home, and so I have taught them to respect bird. And it's not like I have them kind of interacting with him regularly, so I'm really the primary caregiver. But I do think that he actually kind of appreciates the hustle and bustle and some of the action that's going on. And so he's pretty social. He also likes glasses, pulling my phone out of my pocket. He will chew on my feet if I'm sitting on the couch. So he gets into all sorts of fun.
So it sounds like he does spend quite a bit of time with your family, mainly with you, but interacting in general. What does his normal daily routine look like with your family?
Yeah, well, and I also have some foster conures with me. So generally, the conures are kind of the early bird risers. So they fly around, and bird is quite patient. I don't have them mixing large and small birds. So then I wake him up, and I give him a little bit of time in his cage so that he can have his morning poop. And then he comes out and we do some big flies. And so he's a really great flyer. And it's so wonderful because it's so good for him and healthy, and he gets lots of his energy out. And so we do some flight training. He's mostly clicker trained. He also makes the clicker sound with his own voice, so he knows when he's been a good bird. And then he generally we get him his breakfast, and he'll go back into his cage and have his breakfast, and then out for a little bit more playing.
And he likes to look out the window, right? That's what he's doing when he's sliding over on the back of the chair there.
He's looking at the window. I think he actually is, yeah, he wants to go for some flies. He's kind of a
Oh,
little bit like antsy, and I think he wants me to go over there. So I did a little bit before the adoption fair. But it's interesting because I have play stands throughout the house, but he's not really into those. He likes furniture and shoulders, and I'm actually now getting him more familiar with some of those perches, but I think he wants to go for a fly, but he's like, no, but I don't want to go over to those perches. He might at one point go over to the couch.
okay.
We'll see.
We have a few audience questions. One, when he flies, where does he go in your house?
Yeah, so he likes to land on the couch, the chair, sometimes because he's a good flyer. He'll actually kind of start flying one place and then realize I'm not actually in that room, and then he'll circle around and come back into the other room. I have a big open concept area, so he can actually fly around a fair amount. But I also have what I call a station, which is essentially his travel stand. And so I say station, and then he flies over most of the time, flies over to his station, and then he makes a click sound. And so he's got that little area too. And so thus far, he's more of he actually, he would much rather land on the couch than the bird stands, but we are working on that.
They're always more interested in the things that we people interact with, I think,
Yeah.
than the things that we expect them to interact with. This is a question more towards our general bird discussion that we had before we talked about bird specifically. Can we increase habitat with more funding to support birds on a global scale? Is that something that Mickaboo helps with?
I think that there are other organizations that are working on habitat, and a lot of this involves multiple governments, but Mickaboo is part of the Parrot Conservation Alliance. And together we are all trying to find solutions to conserving birds in their natural habitats, as well as trying to figure out solutions for the birds in captivity that are not, bird has never been living in the rainforest or whatnot, but as best we can support his well-being and in captivity, we will.
And then so he's not a wild bird, and I think most of Mickaboo birds at this point probably aren't. But do you know where Bird came from and how he got to Mickaboo?
Well, Bird was purchased at a pet shop, and actually there actually still is a fairly significant smuggling of parrots in from their native habitat. So we think about, oh, this is a problem of the past, but it's actually not true. And so while, we're not entirely sure where he came from, so it's, sometimes they have breeder information on their bands, but he was purchased from a pet store, and so that's really kind of hard to know. And now he's with Mickaboo.
Is there any other fun stories or anything that you'd like any potential adopter for Bird to know?
Yeah, so Bird is a real, I think, culinary connoisseur. So I learned really very early on that his favorite place in the house is the kitchen, and he's a bit of a food thief. And so, you can tell he really enjoys being at the dinner table, and he will actually steal the food off of your plate. And so I would set him a plate, and then I would put my plate in front of me. He would ignore his plate and grab the food off of mine. So now I put my plate to the side and his at my place setting, and that kind of works a little well. So I'll be like grabbing my food from the other side. And so, yeah, that's a little bit of a fun story. And so we always try to make sure that he has, a plenty assortment. It actually improves my eating as well. Because I make him a salad and myself a salad. And so together we're eating more vegetables these days.
Yeah, and then maybe he sees from you that the greens are fun to eat and that he should try to venture out more in his food choices too.
Right, right. Sometimes he'll steal them out of my hand and then throw them on the floor. I'm like, hey, I was gonna eat that.
He's saving you. Well, thank you so much for telling us about Bird. Next, we're going to go to Tiffany and Brandon, who have Rowdy, the blue and gold macaw. Hi.
Hi.
Oh,
Um, So Rowdy is gorgeous. His feathers are so beautiful. Um, do you want to tell us how he came to Mickaboo or about how old he is?
Yeah, I think he's about 25 years old. We've had him for over a year and a half, I would say. He was found in an outdoor shed. He did have a buddy named Buford, but he passed away. Um,
Yeah, I think she came to Mickaboo because she had elder people that owned her that passed away, and their family members didn't want to care for the birds.
yeah, trying
Oh,
to get her to turn around a little bit.
play with a toy.
Yeah.
He definitely is interested in you guys. So he looks like he's not afraid of people, it looks like. What is his usual interaction with you guys during the day?
All right. I think she's a girl,
Oh,
possibly.
sorry, yes, she.
But, she likes to join us for dinner, and she likes to surf on her cage and look out the window. And she prefers Brandon over me, so he spends a little bit more time with her than I usually do. But just talk to her, and she likes head scratches.
Yeah. Head scratches, forehead kisses.
Yeah.
He was like, "You kiss."
Yeah.
And Rowdy's currently a single bird. Would she like to have a friend, or is she doing well on her own?
I would say she's doing pretty good by herself. I do have an Amazon parrot in the same room with her, and she seems to enjoy the company of that bird.
Okay. So she's not afraid of other birds, but
No,
No.
Yeah.
But
No,
it's-
definitely likes the
interaction.
company and interacting with other animals, and likes watching the chickens in the backyard and seeing what's going on. So
does Rowdy have any health concerns that a potential adopter should be aware of?
So Rowdy does have a crooked beak. Nowadays I almost don't even notice it, but she does need yearly trimming of her beak. And then she has a wing injury on her left side that prevents her from flying. But yeah, those things they don't need frequent medical attention or anything.
Okay. And how does so like the last bird we saw is doing loops around Dara's house. How does Rowdy get exercise and entertainment during the day?
I'm just crawling around her cage.
Lots of toys.
Yeah.
Likes to chew on stuff, especially cardboard and paper.
Okay. And what is her diet? What does she normally eat? What are her favorite treats?
She is not a picky bird. She eats Harrison. I've tried like 5 or 6 different pellet foods, and she's ate them all. She likes fruits and veggies. Probably the only thing that I've seen her not really like is blueberries. But she's a very, very good eater. So
Okay. And do you do meal feeding with her, or does she eat during like throughout the day? What's her normal feeding schedule?
so usually in the morning, and then in the afternoon, give her just small meals throughout the day.
Okay.
So yeah, feed her in the morning before I go to work, and then evening when I get home.
So she gets her socializing time is morning and evening, and then she does all right during the day home by
Yeah.
herself with
Yeah.
her own company too. Is there any fun story that you can tell us about Rowdy?
Well, she actually has quite the vocabulary. She's not really a very noisy bird, but she does say a lot. Sometimes when I'm on the phone, I know one time I was on the phone with my mom, and she told me to shut up. And my mom was like, who's in the room with you? And she kind of was like, who's that? And I was like, oh, it's just Rowdy.
What
So
other words does she say?
she says hi, hello, bye-bye, pretty bird, Rowdy, cracker. She'll tell her dog to go outside. She'll say, what's this? What's up? Come here. Ouch. Give me a kiss. want some, and then she burps, she'll laugh,
Wow.
and she barks, she kisses, and meows sometimes.
That is quite the vocabulary.
Mhm.
We have a question from the audience. How does Rowdy do around kids? Have you had her around kids at all?
Yep, we've had our nieces and nephews come over. She seems to really be interested in them, and she's definitely perks up when they show up. She seems to talk and sing a lot more. But we haven't really allowed them to interact with Rowdy just because she's such a big bird. So we are a little worried about, small
Little fingers.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then bird, Dara's bird, she said that it takes a little bit of time for him to warm up to new people. Is Rowdy the same way where she knows who her friends are and is a little wary of strangers?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. When strangers come over, she's definitely interactive and stuff, but then doesn't want to like immediately step up on them or let them pet her. So she wants to kind of see what's going on and interact with them, but doesn't want to be touched by strangers right away. But once she knows them, then she's pretty social and friendly. And she's never bitten hard. So she'll give you like a little like warning, like lunge at you, and just like, nope, I don't want to be touched right now. And she'll just like do that. But yeah, she's very gentle, social bird.
And it sounds like a good communicator too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Try to pick her up, maybe.
Yeah. But yeah, she'll come up to you usually right away pretty good if you want to pick her up and
oh,
that, and then you can pass her off to other people pretty good
Sometimes she'll
when
come
she
to
wants
me.
to.
Definitely not her favorite, so.
You know.
yeah, that was a very
So
nice flow. So she's not afraid of hands or anything. It seems like seems like a nicely socialized bird.
Yep.
Is there
I
anything? Oh, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to keep her, but if I kept her, I wouldn't be able to foster any more birds for Mickaboo, so.
Yeah.
She's very entertaining, very funny.
Yeah. Tiffany definitely likes fostering and helping out as many animals as she can. So doesn't want to keep a bunch of animals forever. So rather kind of be that middle person and try to help out as many as she can rather than just keeping one for herself.
Although
Yeah,
I
Mickaboo
love to
couldn't,
keep Rowdy.
Mickaboo couldn't survive without fosters, so that's an extremely important role. And we can always use more fosters too, especially for the bigger birds.
Yeah.
Before we move on to the next bird, is there any last things you want to say about Rowdy?
I think she would make a really great pet, even for a first-time macaw owner. This is the first time I've had a macaw, so
Oh, wow.
she's
Oh.
very, considering how big she is and how strong her beak is, I think she'd be a really good bird.
Yeah, for her first time, if somebody's getting a big bird for the first time, she'd be really easy for them to kind of get introduced to and not be afraid of, but she's so gentle and social.
Oh, she is so beautiful. The tail is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, she has really vibrant, healthy colors.
Okay, we
Yeah.
did get one more question before we move on. Does she like baths or showers?
Yeah.
She's okay with
So,
that. Yeah.
yeah. So
Maybe not her favorite activity, but she does take
Yeah.
showers.
Yeah, and she'll give herself baths in the water bowl and then take her in the shower with us every once in a while when she needs a full cleaning.
Okay.
So.
Well, thank you so much. Next we're gonna move to Rocky, another blue and gold macaw with Sarah. And this is a pre-recorded video. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Kate. How's it going?
Good. This is Rocky. Do you know how old Rocky is?
Yeah, Rocky is 34.
So that's kind of middle-aged for macaws, right? How long can macaws live?
Yeah, larger macaws like Rocky, they can live to be 60, 70, 80, even longer with good care and good diet. The diet and care part has a huge impact on their full lifespan. So it really does make a difference that they eat fresh food and get lots of opportunity for exercise and movement. We don't see a lot of macaws sadly, in our experience, getting much past, 50, but that's largely because of, care issues around diet mainly. So yeah, Rocky is not old by any means, just kind of approaching middle age.
Okay. And I think I remember you saying that Rocky has had pretty good care for her. Rocky is a girl, right? You think?
Rocky, I think, is a confirmed female. I think has laid eggs in the past with their owner, which obviously we wouldn't have. That's something that you want to discourage if it happens, but it has happened in Rocky's past. So I think this is a confirmed case of being female.
Okay. And Rocky was, she came from an owner that took really good care of her, right?
Yeah, we do. Sometimes we see macaws which have really been in some sad circumstances with periods of neglect. Rocky is not such a bird. She had a really great home for almost that whole 30-year period. And the only reason that her family rehomed her was because they were just getting to an age where they were starting to slow down and worried about their health and worried about Rocky's future. This is a common issue with macaws. We take in a lot of macaws where and we have quite a few waiting right now where the family are just getting to that point in life where planning ahead to make sure that your bird is safe and has a good arrangement if something should happen to you is really necessary. It's not, unlike other animals you might have at home where you more than likely would outlive them. A macaw, if you're middle-aged already as a person, macaw's probably gonna almost certainly outlive you unless something awful happens. So you really do need a plan. And they were being very proactive and sensible. And so after a period of looking for a good fit, we did find a home for Rocky. Rocky moved to an adopter who had her for a couple of years. Unfortunately, they had one macaw they'd adopted already, and Rocky is used to being an only bird. She did not appreciate being the second bird in the household, and it was just really hard for them to manage. So after a long period of trying, we just had to accept the fact that it wasn't a great dynamic. And rather than having Rocky be very unhappy for the rest of her time with them, after really trying to make the arrangement work, they talked to us and we agreed it was probably best that we take her back and try to find a better fit.
Yeah, and now I saw her dancing in the video. She came out for that walnut, which is a very exciting treat for her, I think.
Yeah. And then this has been a big transition for her coming back. So, as Dara mentioned, we're really short on foster homes for larger birds. And so because we're very committed to always take our birds back, we will board them if we have to for that scenario. So Rocky's living at a boarding facility at the moment with other birds around, and that's it can be an overwhelming environment. We tend to find most of the birds really enjoy it, but it is an adjustment period. And so, Rocky only recently started coming out of her cage, and a giant whole walnut is one of the ways to guarantee that she'll do that a little bit. So that's why she's getting a whole walnut in this clip. We would normally break that down and give her little bits one at a time, but yeah, she's got the AAA prize for this one.
Yeah, and she would much rather, it sounds like, be in a home where she can be the center of attention and not have other birds.
She's a bit of a prima donna, she grew up an only child. She wants to stay that way. She doesn't play nicely with others. I mean, she was lunging and nipping at the other bird if they were put on the same play stand. She wouldn't, they had built an aviary space, and unfortunately she was not able to share it with the other macaws. So it just really wasn't a great setup. So yeah, she'll be a lot happier if she can be the only bird in the household. And I think, honestly, because macaws need so much attention, most macaws are the only macaw in the household. If you have two macaws, that is more often than not more than double the work, because they're both fighting for your attention. It's quite common that you won't be able to let them out at the same time. It's a lot of juggling. So yeah, I think one macaw is, personally, I only ever foster one macaw at a time for that reason. They really do need your time, attention, and love. So she wants it all to herself.
That makes sense. And this is just a general reminder for the audience. If you have questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A in the Zoom. And then I will ask them to whoever is telling us about their birds at the moment. For Sarah, when Rocky's not eating treats like the walnut, what is her normal diet?
Rocky's eating Rowdy bush pellets, which is a pretty reasonable pellet. She also gets fresh vegetable chop every day, and she's pretty good about eating her chop and trying something new. So that's a reasonable diet. We recommend that birds get about half their diet as pellets, and ideally half of it is fresh vegetables. Obviously, you've got to transition slowly and carefully and make sure your bird isn't losing weight whilst you do that. But yeah, Rocky's used to eating Rowdy bush pellets. We're happy to keep her on those. And so yeah, she gets there's a treat every now and then, and maybe a Nutriberry sometimes. And that keeps her getting all the nutrition that she needs, keep her in good health and good feathers.
Okay, and does I guess in the boarding type situation, she probably doesn't get too much out time unless there's someone right there filming her probably. But in her previous home, do you know, is she flighted or does she normally stay around her cage? Do you know what her usual activity level was?
She does not fly. She's used to being taken out places. They would take her out on walks and take her to, different destinations around them. You need to do that safely, obviously. You want to make sure that your bird isn't going to be attacked by any other animals. If people have dogs or other things out, you can get macaw-sized backpacks, which are very practical for going on walks. And you can have a nice day out, take your bird with you so they're not alone, they get to travel with you, and just acclimate them to that gently. So she is used to having done that in the past. She might need some time again. Obviously, every move is a big deal and quite stressful for a macaw because they get very attached to their people, they build trust, they're prey species. It's easy for us to forget. Humans are a predator species. We don't have the same mindset. So, for a prey animal, every time you go somewhere new, you're constantly worried about whether or not there's something about to eat you for lunch. So they really benefit from routine and consistency, and you'd need to kind of build up that routine of going out with them slowly and gently. But once she had that, it could be really nice for her.
That seems like a theme with most of the macaws, that once they know their people and have had a chance to warm up, they're pretty sociable, but they need that time to adjust.
They do, and they go at their own pace. I've had some which are ready to build that trust with you in the space of a week or two, and some which even after months really preferred just to have your ambient attention rather than physical contact.
We have two audience questions. One is was that a specific type of walnut that Rocky was eating?
That was just a bog standard supermarket walnut in the shell. You can buy large bags of them in the shell, and for the birds, especially for macaws, that's a real treat because they can crack the shells and it's a little bit of enrichment for them. A lot of macaws will take the empty shell and kind of mess with it in their beaks afterwards, almost like how humans chew chewing gum. They kind of keep the shell afterwards once the nut's consumed and just kind of play with it. And they kind of enjoy doing that. But it's a lot of nut to eat at one time. So, one walnut a day in the shell is about the right amount. So it's not like you would give them one with every meal. You'd be overdoing it then.
Okay. And then the second question that we got was, how loud is she? And does she have a vocabulary too of people words?
She does. She is actually quite chatty. She'll say hi, Rocky, and hello. She's got a few little catchphrases. She likes to kind of make English sounding words. If you're chatting, she'll kind of along, like you're having a conversation. And she makes a lot of kind of conversational noises. She spent a lot of time listening to humans, and so when she hears people talking, she will join in. But that's something that kind of happens as she warms up. But yeah, she does talk. She can be loud. Every macaw can be loud. Macaws are usually quite triggered by, the sight of strangers outside windows, people approaching the front door. If a new person comes into your home, sunrise and sunset are exciting times. They might have a little moment where they're just, want to scream for a minute. There's no way to train a macaw to be totally quiet all day, but they do tend to be happy to just make their little croaky noises a lot. And then, their excited moments are a lot less frequent than perhaps say with smaller parrots. So it's a trade-off. When they're loud, they're even louder, but it's not for quite as much time compared to smaller parrots.
Okay, so she's probably mostly chatty with a few bursts of louder periods.
Exactly. And you soon learn what those triggers are for birds. They're either alarm calling or they're excited about food or a visitor. When your doorbell goes, it's a bit, like dogs bark when someone comes to the door. It's not totally the same as that, but there are some similar moments.
Okay, and before we move on to the next bird that you're going to tell us about, is there any last things that we should know about Rocky?
Yeah, I'll mention that we've noticed that she does better with rope perches. You can see there's a rope perch across the large top perch in her cage. And she started spending a lot more time up there once the rope perch was added. It's possible that she's got the start of some arthritis in her feet because she seems to favor the rope perches. And you might have noticed when she was climbing around earlier, she was kind of grabbing to try and locate the next bar she wanted to step on. She's not super agile as she moves around. She's a little slower, but not terrible. So definitely we would recommend having rope perches for her. She is also missing one toe, which is not uncommon. That usually happens when the birds are really young juveniles or babies. And then, it doesn't really affect her that much.
Okay, thank you so much for telling us about Rocky.
There's her dancing.
Next, you're going to tell us about Jakey the Catalina macaw, and this is also a pre-recorded video of Jakey.
It is. And in fact, you're going to notice Rocky in the background because Jakey is her neighbor. Yeah, this is Jakey.
Can you tell us? Oh, sorry, go ahead. You're going to.
Oh, well, sorry, I should have waited for your question. I was going to start with age again. It's usually a good place to start. She's a similar age to Rocky. She's 33. So our very close in age. So again, yeah, middle-aged, not old. But as you can see, she's missing quite a few feathers.
And are those going to grow back? It looks like she's very colorful.
Yeah. She's colorful because she's a Catalina macaw. They're a hybrid between a scarlet and a blue and yellow macaw. So they have quite a spectacular coloring. But she is missing a lot of her feathers. She came from a animal control county seizure from a property that had a lot of animals, and they were all seized at the same time. And it was not a great condition in the home. So care was suboptimal, and she'd been pulling out feathers as a result. So that was not a health issue. It was just distress and stress as far as we can tell. So the good news is she's very happy now. And she has had a lot of her we call them under fluffies, like these gray fluffy feathers, which are their sort of soft down and insulation that are it's kind of lower layer of feathers. And a lot of that's grown back. So there's almost no exposed skin anymore. But when birds pull out their feathers for an extended period of time, they damage the follicles. And at some point, the follicles are too damaged for the feathers to fully regrow. So it's unlikely that Jakey's ever going to be fully feathered again with a big yellow belly. But she's got her under fluffies, and she's very happy and healthy. So she's doing really well.
So she didn't start out with the best diet, it sounds like, but what is she eating now that she is happier and healthier with?
She is eating Harrison's pellets. She's got a NutriBerry in this clip here because she's a good girl and she deserves a treat. But yeah, she eats Harrison's pellets and fresh vegetables. So Harrison's is the pellet that our avian vets recommend. So when we can encourage the birds to accept a Harrison's pellet, then we'll keep them on that diet. Yeah, most of our foster macaws are eating Harrison's, but not all of them. Sometimes it's just a journey, and if they will accept a pellet and we can work towards Harrison's over time, that's just the journey that we're on. But yeah, she's on a great diet, and we're just working to keep it that way.
Yeah. And it looks like she's pretty confident out of her cage on the door there. How does she do around people?
It took a while. At first, she would spend more time in her cage. She does this thing where she hangs on the bars by her beak and dangles her feet and just kind of quivers her wings. She still does it sometimes, but she was spending a lot more time inside her cage at first. They do get a lot of out time at this facility, which is one of the things we like about it. I mean, obviously, you have to know the birds and make sure that they get along. So the ones that can be trusted to be responsible, and ultimately the responsibility is us and ours. It's not the birds, but as we get to know their personalities and how much they like to climb down and walk around, they do get to spend quite a few hours hanging out, ideally on top of their own cage, not messing with anybody else. So Jakey's very good. She gets lots and hours of out time because she's very good about just hanging out on her own spot and not getting into mischief anywhere else, which is really lovely. So she's not a difficult bird at all. She's very chill, no drama, just very happy to do her own thing and just enjoy being in a nice place and being well looked after.
Does she like having the other birds around her just as general company, even though she doesn't try to interact with them? Or do you think that she would be more similar to Rocky wanting her own house?
She seems largely indifferent. I think she doesn't mind having the other birds around, but she also doesn't seem really excited by them. So I think as long as she had a person, I don't think she would mind if there were other birds in the home as well. She just really is, she enjoys her toys. She enjoys having her own space. But as long as she's being well looked after, then I don't think she would insist on being the only bird the same way that Rocky really needs to be.
Okay. And for people, do you know if Jakey has any experience with different ages of people or like a preference for male or female caregivers?
We have noticed that she really just seems to build a lot of trust with her main caregiver, so they will always be like the preferred person. I don't think you could expect if you were a large family or household, I don't think she would step up for everybody equally. I think she would probably show more interest and trust in the person that was giving her the most care. So she will accept head scritches and step up for someone that she knows really well, but it does take some time, and she's pretty standoffish with other people. I've noticed if I try to move my hand closer to her, you can get to a certain point where once you're about 12 inches away, her body language is very clear. She opens her beak a little and she puts her wings out a little, and it's just a very defensive, this is close enough, thank you, don't touch me. It's very polite. She's letting you know she doesn't want contact, but she doesn't mind that you talk to her. So they're like people, right? I mean, I won't let any random person just walk up and lay their hands on me. I think it's quite reasonable.
And she's a good communicator, it sounds like. So maybe with the right person and patience, she would make a really nice bird for someone.
Yeah, I think as long as you're not expecting her to be happy-go-lucky, with everyone in your household to be able to pick her up and handle her, she's going to be chill around them. She's not going to be difficult with people, but you just have to understand that she takes her time to build trust, and she's going to invest it all in her main caretaker, I think.
Do you think she would do better? Do you think she'd do better in a quieter home, or would she be okay with a home that has more activity going around?
That's a good question. Given that we don't know much about her background, I mean, obviously she was pulling her feathers out in her past, but we're imagining she was probably kept in a very confined space and very poor hygiene. So, the stress wasn't necessarily noise or activity. It could have been a lot of other factors and even things that were scary for her. So it's hard to say. I mean, obviously with a lot of macaws in the same room, it can get loud, but that's a fun bird kind of loud. So we haven't had her around a lot of children. We don't really know how she would react to that energy. Again, as prey animals, birds can be intimidated by fast moving people. They look like predators. And ironically, when we stare at them and smile, we're just baring our teeth and we look even more like scary predators. So Yeah, I don't think you need a lot of big bird experience to care for Jakey. But I think going slow and taking your time and respecting what she's ready to do would be how to succeed.
So just someone who's patient and continue to give her really good care to make sure that her health stays good like it is now.
Yeah, she's come a long way. She's been through enough, She just needs, some fun toys and a safe place and good space and a clean environment, a good diet, and someone she can trust.
Thank you so much for telling us about Jakey. Are you ready to tell us about the next 3 birds that you have with?
Yeah, let's do a lightning round now. So, because we're so full and we have so many birds waiting to come in, we're having to prioritize birds which are really in unsafe spaces or getting care that is concerning and that, we really need to prioritize for their own health and safety. And so there are a few birds which, are still waiting in the wings and are not officially foster birds for us right now. But they do need forever homes. And so we're just going to feature a few that are pending intake, but if you are an approved adopter and you've gone through a process, we'd be happy to put you in touch so that you could adopt them if that's the bird that you think could be a good fit for you. So this is our first one, which is Mango. And you can see Mango is quite a dancer. She's got some moves. She doesn't have a lot of feathers, but she's got some moves.
Sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead. Is Mango also a blue and gold macaw? What type is she?
She's a Catalina macaw, so she's just like Jakey, but she's going for the full naked belly look. So yeah, her underfluffies even will not grow back in. She hasn't been neglected at all. She had a great home who's taking good care of her, but there are just some macaws who they don't thrive in captivity the same way that we hope they would. And this is really why we advocate for adoption and not supporting breeding macaws or selling them in pet stores or the pet trade. They're really not pets. It's not a word that we use. And we're their caretakers, not their owners. They just really don't, it's a totally unnatural environment for them. And so for some of these birds, even without having health issues, they are still going to pluck their feathers out. So Mango is a happy bird and she had a great owner. She will step up. She accepts head scritches. She hasn't been badly treated, but she has pulled out a lot of her feathers. And so that's her personal customized appearance that she's got going. And it's not going to change anytime soon. That's a permanent look.
What does Mango eat? Oh, this is a cute video of her dancing. I'm gonna skip the food question for a minute just because this video. So she likes interacting with people. It looks like she's a little bit more of a show off than the previous birds that we've been seeing, maybe.
Yeah, the way to get her to come out of her cage is to start clapping her hands and singing and dancing. She is really into dancing. So we were trying to do a little photo shoot. So we had her doing her dance, and then when we stopped singing and clapping her hands, she would go back in her cage, so we'd have to start singing again. Dancing in general is a great way to encourage macaws to do something. If you want them to enjoy a spray shower and they're not used to having a spray shower, if you make it into a singing and dancing game, you'll usually get their interest in doing it and they'll act a bit happier. So it's just the way to a macaw's heart is food and dancing.
Well, she looks very happy doing her dance. So to go back to my food question, what does Mango eat?
Mango's on a pelleted diet. I think it is Harrison's, but I don't know for sure. But obviously, anytime people adopt a bird through us, we give them lots of information about the diet that they're currently on because we want it to be consistent when they go to their new home. But she's not on a high-fat seed mix or anything. She's eating a pelleted diet.
Okay. And how old is Mango? Do you know?
Yes, she's 26.
Okay.
She's 26, and she had the same owner for almost all of her life. So she has not had to be moved around or rehomed a whole lot. Unfortunately, family changes are meaning that the owner thinks it's in her best interests to find a new home now. And that, because macaws live so long, even with people who love them very much, We just never know what our futures hold. People's lives change.
And then because she is a little bit naked, is there any special care that she needs because of that? Or she's just happy like that and doesn't need anything special?
There's no special care required, really. It's just a case of, looking out for all the usual health signals. You should weigh your bird regularly. You should watch their droppings and look for any changes in their consistency or smell. And those are just things that are good practice. As long as your bird is healthy, even if they are plucked, you don't need to put a sweater on them. You don't need to give them a heater or a heating panel or heated perches. Birds run pretty warm. So if you're comfortable in your home with the temperature, then your bird's going to be just fine as long as they're healthy. I would only be thinking about keeping them warmer if they were very, very senior or if they had known health issues and they needed extra heat for support. So even though she is missing a lot of feathers, she doesn't really need any special accommodation for that. Obviously watch her skin for any signs of any issues, but you should not be putting lotions or moisturizers on it. No products. She doesn't need a skincare routine, no sweaters, no fashion. Just let her be a bird and give her, plenty of space and really good food and lots of attention and love.
Okay. Is there anything else we should know about Mango before we move on to the next two?
She's just a really big dancer. That's her party trick. Some macaws are chattier and some are escape artists and some of them are party animals and love dancing. So Mango's in the dancing category.
That's adorable.
She's very sweet.
Thank you for showing us Mango. The next two are a pair, Ginger and Monty. And this is again a pre-recorded video of Ginger and Monty, or actually maybe photos.
There's a bit of video in here, but yeah, it starts with some photos.
So how did, these are not officially Mickaboo birds. These are just courtesy listings from their current owners, but how old are they and what is their background?
They're in their early 20s. They were used to having a male owner. So Ginger is the red-fronted macaw that you can see hanging on the side of the cage in this clip. And Ginger really is more acclimatized to men. So she doesn't step up very readily for people presenting as ladies, but she would step up for a man more readily. So that might be something you want to think about in terms of how interested you are in handling the birds. They're pretty easy. They've spent their whole lives together, so they need to stay together. But they do have their own cages. So you can see there's two cages and they're both right next to each other. And they should continue to have two cages to sleep in safely at night. But during the day, the doors are open and they visit and hang out on top of the same cage. They spend a lot of time together. They go into each other's cages and steal each other's food. And, they provide a lot of company and enrichment for each other. So they definitely should remain a pair.
And what do these two eat?
They are also eating pellets. Let me double check. They're eating pellets and veggies. I mean, obviously, because we're familiar with the good care they're getting, all these birds are on pellets and veggies, which is what we would recommend. I don't know the brand, but again, we'll always give detailed information about current care, diet routines, the toys that they enjoy playing with, what their current wake up and bedtime hours are. That's the kind of information that we always make sure goes with the birds so that they get consistency in their new home. It really helps with the transition.
And then another audience question. All of these birds in the last few videos have been, they're boarded. What is the cost to Mickaboo for boarding these birds?
We are given a slight discount because we're a rescue. But it's pretty similar to standard commercial boarding rates. I mean, those vary around different options. We have some birds which we have also got boarded at vets, usually for medical hospital reasons, but we have a couple that are also there just because it's a safe place. And so we do get a slight discount as a rescue. But if you're looking at what the boarding costs, you really just need to contact the places that you're looking at.
Okay. And then can people watching this video donate towards the boarding costs of the birds?
You're welcome to use our website contact us form. We have a lot of birds that need sponsorship as angels. In fact, we're going to talk about some of those in the upcoming slot. So, you know, our donations are really, it's not our default policy to be boarding birds. We do it when we need to make sure that they are safe. So, like we mentioned, Ginger and Monty are not Mickaboo birds. We're not paying for their boarding. But their owner has given them up and relinquished them, so they are homeless. And you know, through goodwill and a good bird community, they're being cared for. But they do need a new forever home. So you know, we only resort to boarding costs when we absolutely have to for birds' safety and well-being. Obviously, that's why we have a network of over 100 foster homes, and we're always looking for more foster homes. But yeah, we're going to talk about some birds that cannot be adopted out because of their health problems. And we have an angels page where we're looking for people to sponsor birds and be their angel. And as such, you get updates about them and how they're doing. And after 26 years, Mickaboo has quite a population of older birds that are either in hospice care or have really serious medical conditions that make them really hard to adopt out. So absolutely, you can donate towards individual birds' care. And we're always happy to work out an arrangement with you to support those birds.
Thank you. And before we move on to the next slot to talk about those birds, is there anything else you want to tell us about Monty and Ginger?
Ginger loves metal clanky toys like bells. So stainless steel, obviously, only safe metals. Monty prefers wooden toys and kebabs. And Ginger's quite chatty. She's got quite a tendency to sort of, again, it's almost like it's babble. It's not words or sentences you can make out, but it sounds very much like she's talking to you, like so she's it's quite sweet. But yeah, given that we've talked about boarding a lot in this segment, I'll just mention as well that if you do need to board your bird anywhere, please make sure it's somewhere that requests health screening. Because you know that there are some cheaper options that don't require health screening and don't quarantine birds, and that's incredibly dangerous. So just please, you know, take your time, plan ahead, and make sure that anywhere you're boarding your bird is requesting health certificates, you know, blood panel and a gram stain and those kinds of precautions.
Which is a good transition into our next segment, which is a in-depth pre-recorded video and audio about macaws with papillomatosis. These birds are not adoptable and will stay with Mickaboo through the rest of their lives due to medical status. We're showing them today because we're looking for angel donors to sponsor these birds financially towards their medical costs. And if you have any questions during the video, please feel free to use the Q&A chat to ask anything that you want about these birds or any of the previous birds that you've seen.
Hi, Shelley. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you, Pam?
I'm doing fine, thank you. So you are the wonderful Mickaboo volunteer who has been caring for Mickaboo's pat birds for several years now. How long have you been volunteering with Mickaboo in general and then helping to take care of these very specific birds?
I started volunteering with Mickaboo in 2007, so 17 years. I take in all of the pat birds that come into Mickaboo. And I also used to coordinate huge adoption fairs in Sacramento, and I help solicit donations for fundraising purposes.
And how long have you been taking care of what we're calling pat birds here?
I got Mackie as a free bird in 2006. So I had him for 18 years. He just passed away. So quite a long time. And I've had, I've had 10 pat birds, plus Bluebird, who I had before I knew Mackie was contagious. So he's technically considered exposed.
Okay. And we've been saying pat birds, pat birds, pat birds. What does PAP stand for? And can you tell us a little bit about that particular illness?
It's the avian papillomatosis. I can't even say it. Disease. it affects hookbill hookbill birds. So, canaries, those, or finches, chickens, those kind of birds aren't going to get it. Pigeons aren't going to get it. It can't affect humans, dogs, cats, or any other animals. It's basically strictly the hookbill parrots.
And what
It's
happens to them when they contract this disease?
it's basically, most of the time you see it in their vent or their bottom, and it looks kind of like a wad of gum. It's kind of the same color as the tissue in your mouth, so it's like bright pink and sort of that soft tissue. And what it does is, in the beginning at least, it kind of swells up, and you'll hear your bird straining to defecate, and sometimes there'll be blood. It does affect their immune system. So I've had birds who, they have PAP, or they've been exposed to PAP but don't present with the herpes virus, but they get other diseases. And some of that could be based on the nutrition that they've gotten or the vet care that they've gotten in the past. So many of my birds have had heart disease. I had one bird get aspergillus. Sometimes papilloma can go into cancer. And I know not a lot of people want to take on this disease because it is considered hospice. These birds will die in your care. But as in the case of Mackie, I had him 18 years.
Mm-hmm.
He lived a good long time. So, you never know what it's like humans, some are more susceptible to things than others. So,
Okay. And I think I heard you say that when a bird has papilloma, that they are more susceptible to other diseases, and that's why we went along that particular tangent.
right.
Okay. So when did you get your first pap bird, and why?
I got Mackie in 2016. He was a bird that my niece called me and said, "Hey, Aunt Shelley, do you want a free macaw?" Me, of course, said yes. Beware the free parrot, okay, because, they didn't tell me he had any problems. He was only 4 years old. He had been passed around to 4 different people. And at that point, I told Mackie, I said, "You will stay with me until the day you die," which is what happened. So when I got him, I was taking him to the vet for a checkup, and the vet noticed something weird going on with his rear end. And so she tested him, and it came back that he was papilloma positive. So I started doing research, and there isn't a lot of stuff out there. And I came upon Mickaboo because Mickaboo had Rico in the system, who was a green-winged macaw. And because they're flock animals, I thought, oh, well, I should inquire about adopting Rico because, Mackie would like to have a friend. So that was kind of what happened. And from there, I got Rico. When everything was cleared up, I got Rico. And a month and a day later, Max came in, and he also came into my home. It seems like the pap birds come in waves. I don't know why. They come in and they kind of go out in waves. To 2012, I lost, I think, 3 or 4 birds that year. It was a really bad year for me.
Okay, that's a really tough one.
Yeah. So, you got to consider, yes, it's going to be rewarding, because Rico, for example, he was terrified of people. He had all kinds of health issues. He was really in bad shape. And I had him for 5 years. And at the end of the 5 years, he would run off his cage and jump into my arms. So, you really get attached because you're having to sometimes medicate these animals, and they have to learn to trust you. And, that's kind of what keeps you going, because you're really the last stop. Most of these birds would be euthanized if Mickaboo didn't take them in.
Right. So you're giving them a good quality of life for their remaining years, just like, people hospice, that idea.
Right.
Okay. So we are seeing a couple of birds. There's Bucko and what's the other bird's name?
It's Bella.
Okay. So can you tell us a little bit about those birds and some of your typical experiences? What are the highs and what are the, not so high?
Well, Bucko is my Harlequin macaw, and she was my dream bird. I was so excited. She had been in Mickaboo for years and years and years. And the woman that had her before me could no longer care for her. And I don't know, but my experience with Harlequins is they're kind of the class clown of the macaw species. They're kind of laid back like the green wing, and they're smart like the blue and gold, which is what a Harlequin is. And I mean, Bucko sings and she dances, and I can flip her upside down. I can hang her by her feet. I can pretty much do anything I want to her. And she really has a sense of humor. I mean, Bluebird, my Amazon, will be in the other room screaming his brains out, and she's in there just telling him to shut up. He just gets on her last nerve, you know. And she talks a lot, and she plays, and she gets into mischief. You know, you really need to watch a macaw because they like to kind of sneak around and get into things.
Like kitchen shelves and that.
Oh, yes. When I moved into this house, I bird-proof my bird room, so it has a plexiglass floor to ceiling. But, you know, like any macaw, she likes to destroy toys, and she likes to be with her people. I mean, for the most part, most of the time, pap birds, you wouldn't even know they were sick. I mean, they act normally. You just have things that you kind of have to keep your eyes open for. You know, if they're straining to poop, they make a noise, or if there's blood in their stool, you know, things like that. If they have breathing issues, you know, sometimes they'll get papilloma in their throat. Oliver came in, and she always breathed poorly, and it's just something that goes along with it. I'm not sure that there's even still after all these many years that there's a lot of knowledge out there. I had a bird that I took in, Jessie, who was also a Mickaboo bird. She was a yellow-naped Amazon, and I took her in, and they knew she had PAP, and they diagnosed her as having macaw wasting disease, which devastated me because that's another horrible disease. Well, I decided from the symptoms that she was describing that those were all papilloma symptoms, and I wanted a second opinion. So I went to Medical Center for Birds, and she had cancer, which would have totally been treatable. So I take all my birds to Medical Center for Birds because they seem to have the most knowledge.
So one of the other birds that we're seeing here is Bella. Can you tell us a little bit about Bella?
Bella is a greenwing. She's very stoic. She's, you know, she doesn't, you know, greenwings are just kind of very laid back for the most part. Beautiful birds. They're the gentle giants of the macaws. And her favorite thing is to cuddle on my chest. She'll just lay her head against my chest, and she likes to have her chin rubbed, and she'll just close her eyes like a cat, just eat it up. She's not really a mischief maker. I mean, they all like to get down off their perches and kind of wander. So, you know, you just kind of have to keep your eyes and ears open when you have parrots in the house.
So it sounds like what you're telling us is that having a pap bird is like having a normal macaw, except for the fact that one needs to be extra vigilant about potential signs of illness.
Yes, and one also needs to know that, I mean, it is very contagious. So, like, for example,
Other birds.
when I did, other hookbill birds, when I did adoption fairs, I would take a shower, put on clean clothes, and leave the house. I wouldn't sit down. I wouldn't touch anybody. You know, I was very cognizant of the fact that, you know, I didn't want to infect any other birds because it's thought that it's transferred through contact and feces. So, you know, you just got to keep those things in the back of your head.
So in that regard, I mean, I've heard about PAP being in macaws, to your point, and in Amazons, but not any other parrots, you know, like cockatoos. Did we just get lucky at Mickaboo, or?
It's thought to be a New World disease, New World bird, so North and South America. So that would be the macaws, the Amazons, and conures. Okay. I did have somebody contact me on Facebook because I have it listed that I take care of these birds. And she said she had a cockatoo that had it. But recently I talked to one of the vets at Medical Center for Birds, and she said cockatoos don't get it. So it could be that her bird was misdiagnosed. I don't know.
Okay, and when the pap bird eventually goes to the veterinary clinic, whichever one it is that just a one-day thing in and out, or are we talking like a lot of time and therefore a lot of vet bills?
It kind of depends on what's going on. I mean, I tend to be very careful and paying attention because, you know, birds like to hide their disease. The pap birds tend to need surgery every once in a while to debulk that tissue on their vent so that they can defecate. And in that case, they're usually there a few days, maybe a week, depends on how they're doing.
Okay, and so because at Mickaboo, the hospice birds vet bills get paid by Mickaboo's generous donors. You know, we're always looking for people to help us keep the quality of life up for these birds and others in our rescue flock. Shelley, any other last comments about the pat birds before we go on?
Well, it's very rewarding to take in these birds. I mean, you're providing them love and rehabilitation and that sort of thing. They are considered a hospice bird. So you have to be aware that it's probable that they will die in your care. I've had one for 6 months. I've had Mackie for 18 years. So, you know, there's no time limit like, oh, they're all going to die in 6 months. I mean, there's just no way of knowing. But that's something you need to keep in mind. It's very rewarding because, like in Rico's case, I couldn't even sweep my floor because somebody had mistreated him with a broom. And by the end of the 5 years, I could actually pick him up with the broom handle if I needed to. So, you know, it's very rewarding, but it's also very heartbreaking at times.
Okay, thank you. So people who want to help Mickaboo with this very boutique volunteer position of caring for pat birds, we're always looking for additional homes who want to give this kind of care to this very special kind of bird, as well as people who can, help be generous toward helping toward the vet bills for these birds. Thank you, Shelley, so much for caring for these birds and sharing your knowledge. And now we're going to go on to our next foster care.
Thank you so much for watching our virtual adoption fair and learning more about birds with papillomaviruses. If you have any more questions, please feel free to ask them in the chat. We do have a few more questions to cover before we close. So for beak trimming, we only trim birds' beaks if they have a growth issue. So normally formed beaks don't need to be trimmed regularly, and the extent or the frequency of trimming is very dependent on the bird's beak and what it needs. Sarah asked me to mention that Monty and Ginger, the last pair of birds that we saw, do require beak trimming occasionally. And then a question for Dara, what kind of research is done for papillomas? Is that something that you're able to answer for us?
Hi. I'm not actually in the research area on these, but I think that there's certain sources. So looking on the Med Archive or the Biomed Archive, I can share those links and looking to see what sort of the latest research is on those.
Thank you. Are there any more questions before we finish for the day? I can see Pam typing, so I'm just waiting in case any more questions pop up. If we don't have any for now, please help us donate for these birds' care. This link, mickaboo.org/donate, has various options for receiving donations to us. And also, if you'd like to sponsor a macaw with the papillomatosis specifically, if you visit our angel page under how to help on the Mickaboo website, there's instructions for that. And if you would like to foster or adopt, please sign up for a basic bird care class. And if you have already done that, please feel free to fill out an application for adoption or fostering. We can always use more foster homes, even if you're not ready to fully adopt a bird. Thank you so much for joining us. Sarah, if you'd like to run the credits, I think we're ready now. Thank you.